The Vorthan Warfleet had crushed 17 different worlds across the galaxy. Their massive ships were painted with the marks of victory, each symbol representing another planet that had fallen to their power. The Vorthans believed in one simple rule: the strong take everything, and the weak deserve nothing. Commander Thexfell stood tall on the bridge of his largest warship. His 4 arms moved across the control panels as he watched the screens showing their latest prize. The small human ship called Pioneer hung in their cargo bay like a broken toy. It had been so easy to capture that. Thexfell almost felt disappointed. The human ship was primitive compared to Vorthan technology. Its hull was made of simple metal alloys, and its weapons were laughably weak. The 12 crew members inside had surrendered without much of a fight. Now, they sat in holding cells, waiting to be questioned. Captain Lee June of the Earth Defense Corps tried to stay calm as the alien guards marched him to the interrogation room. He had seen his crew taken away one by one over the past 2 days. The translator device they had forced him to wear made the alien voices sound mechanical and cold. The interrogation room was bare except for 2 chairs and a table. The Vorthan questioner was huge, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with scaly green skin and yellow eyes that never blinked. Its 4 arms moved independently as it operated different devices. "Sit," the alien commanded in perfectly translated Korean. Lee June sat down slowly, his hands cuffed behind his back. He had been a soldier for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "We have studied your language files," the Vorthan said, its voice flat and emotionless. "Your species interests us. We found something strange in your words. You have a concept you call mercy. Explain this to us." Lee Jun felt his heart skip a beat. Of all the things they could ask about, why this mercy means showing kindness to someone who cannot fight back. It means helping those who are weaker than you. The alien made a chittering sound that might have been laughter. "You mean weakness? This explains why your kind has never conquered other worlds. Your evolution has created a defect in your thinking." "It is not a defect," Lee Jun said firmly. "Mercy makes us stronger, not weaker. It helps us build trust with others. It allows us to create peace." The Vorthan leaned forward, its 4 arms spread wide on the table. "Peace is what the defeated call their surrender. Trust is what prey feels before the predator strikes. Your mercy is why you will die, and your world will fall." Through the observation window, other Vorthians watched the conversation. They whispered among themselves in their native language, making the same chittering sounds of amusement. "Tell us about your home world," the interrogator continued. "How many of your kind live there?" "About 8 billion people," Lee Jun answered. There was no point in lying. Their computers probably already knew. 8 billion weak creatures who believe in mercy, the alien mused. "Your planet will be easy to harvest. We will take your resources and use your people as workers. Those who resist will be eliminated." Lee Jun felt anger building in his chest. "You do not understand what mercy really means. It is not weakness. It is the choice to be better than your worst instincts. Instincts exist for survival," the voice replied. "The strong survive by taking what they need. The weak die because they hesitate to take what they need. Your mercy will ensure your extinction." The interrogation continued for hours. The aliens asked about Earth's defenses, its technology, and its military strength. Lee Jun answered honestly, knowing that lying would only make things worse for his crew. But with each question, he realized these creatures truly could not understand the concept of mercy. To them, every interaction was about power. Every relationship was about who dominated and who submitted. They had built their entire civilization on the idea that might makes right. The concept of choosing kindness over cruelty was as foreign to them as breathing underwater would be to a human. When the questioning finally ended, the guards dragged Lee Jun back to his cell. His crew members looked at him with hopeful faces, but he could only shake his head. There would be no negotiation, no prisoner exchange, no mercy. The next morning, Commander Vexel reviewed the interrogation reports while his ship prepared to leave for Earth. The humans had confirmed what the tactical scans already showed. Their world was poorly defended, with only a few hundred military spacecraft and some orbital defense platforms. The human homeworld will fall within days of our arrival, his aide reported. Their technology is approximately 50 years behind our standard equipment. Nexvel nodded with satisfaction. And their belief in mercy will prevent them from fighting as hard as they could. They will try to minimize casualties on both sides, which will make our victory even easier. He walked to the viewing port and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was a blue world full of creatures who thought mercy was strength. Soon they would learn the truth. In the universe, only the ruthless survived. The 12 human prisoners were executed that afternoon. Their bodies were ejected into space as the Vorthan fleet began its journey toward Earth. None of the aliens understood that they had just made the greatest mistake in their civilization's history. They thought mercy was humanity's weakness. They would soon discover it was their greatest strength. 3 months had passed since the Pioneer disappeared in deep space. Earth's governments had tried to prepare, but how do you ready a world for an enemy that could cross the galaxy? Admiral Han Geiseok stood in the command center on Luna Station, staring at the tactical display that showed empty space around Earth's moon. Then the stars began to disappear. The Vorthan fleet emerged from hyperspace, like a dark cloud swallowing the light. One by one, massive alien warships materialized in perfect formation. Their hulls were black metal that seemed to absorb starlight, and each ship was easily 3 times larger than Earth's biggest military vessel. Contact count, ... 500. 700. Still climbing, reported Lieutenant Choi Soo-young from her station. Her voice remained steady, but her hands shook as she worked the controls. Admiral Han watched the numbers climb on his screen. 800 ships. 900 when the count reached 1,000 and stopped. The command center fell silent, except for the hum of computers. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," announced Communications Officer Park Jinwoo. "Put it through." The main screen filled with the image of Commander Vexel. His forearms were spread wide, and his yellow eyes gleamed with confidence. When he spoke, the translation software made his voice sound cold and mechanical. "Humans of Earth, I am Commander Vexel of the Vorthan Empire. Your world now belongs to us. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make your species suffer for generations before extinction." Admiral Han stepped forward. "This is Admiral Han Geiseok of the Earth Defense Force. We reject your demands. Earth will defend itself." The alien made that chittering sound that passed for laughter among his kind. "With what? Your 200 primitive ships? Your orbital platforms that fire chemical rockets? We studied your technology from the crew we captured. You are children playing with toys. Then you will learn what children can do when you threaten their home." The transmission ended, and Admiral Han turned to his staff. Around him, young officers waited for orders. Most of them had never seen real combat. In a few hours, they would either be dead or watching their world burn. "All stations, execute Defense Protocol 7. Send the evacuation signal to all civilian populations, military personnel, to combat positions." He paused, looking at each face around him. For Earth, they echoed. The first wave of Vorthan fighters screamed through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Major Lim Hae-won gripped the controls of her interceptor fighter as she led Squadron 7 toward the enemy formation approaching Seoul. "Remember your training," she said into her radio. "These ships are faster and stronger, but we know our home better than they do. Use the terrain, make every shot count." The alien fighters were sleek and deadly, but they flew unpredictable. patterns. Major Lim dove her aircraft between two enemy ships and fired her missiles at point-blank range. The explosion lit up the sky, but 3 more enemy fighters immediately took its place. Squadron leader, we are outnumbered 10-1, called Lieutenant Kim Tae-hun over the radio. Then we make them pay for every meter, she replied, pulling her fighter into a climbing turn that would have broken the neck of any untrained pilot. The battle above Seoul was repeated in skies all over Earth. Human pilots fought with desperate courage, using tactics their enemies had never seen. They hid in cloud formations, used mountain ranges as cover, and attacked from the sun's direction to blind enemy sensors. But courage could not overcome mathematics. For every alien ship destroyed, Earth lost 5. The defense platforms around major cities held for 6 hours before being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Commander Dexville watched the battle reports with growing respect for his enemy. The humans fought better than he had expected. Their pilots showed remarkable skill, and their ground forces used surprisingly effective tactics when the landing pods began falling. Beijing has fallen to our ground forces, his aide reported. Moscow is under siege. New York's defense grid is failing. Casualties, higher than projected, sir. The humans are not surrendering when defeated. They fight to the death. Dex found this puzzling. Most species surrendered when defeat became obvious, hoping to save some of their population. These humans seemed determined to fight even when they had no chance of winning. What about their capital city? Seoul's outer defenses have been breached. Resistance is fierce, but disorganized. The city should fall within hours. Through his viewing port, Vexvel could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and white jewel. Soon, it would be another trophy in the Vorthan Empire. But something bothered him about this conquest. The humans fought with a determination that seemed to go beyond simple survival instinct. On Earth's surface, the battles raged through the night. In the ruins of military bases and the wreckage of cities, human soldiers fought on. They had no hope of victory, but they refused to give up. Captain Yoon Min-sik led the last defenders of Seoul's government district. His unit was down to 30 soldiers with limited ammunition. Alien dropships circled overhead like mechanical vultures. Sir, we should retreat, suggested Sergeant Nam Hojin. Live to fight another day. Captain Yoon looked at the ruins of his city, then at the frightened faces of civilians hiding in nearby buildings. No, we hold this position. These people are counting on us. The concept that had meant nothing to the Vorthans was about to reveal its true power. General Kang Minho crouched behind a broken concrete wall in what used to be the United Earth Defense Headquarters in Geneva. The building had been beautiful once, with glass walls and gardens on every floor. Now it was a pile of twisted metal and rubble, lit only by the fires burning throughout the city around him. 37 people worked at damaged computer terminals and radio equipment. They were all that remained of Earth's military command structure. Colonel Bae Sunmi, his second in command, approached with a grim expression on her dirt-covered face. Sir, the reports from all sectors are the same, she said quietly. Our organized military forces have been destroyed. We have some resistance groups still fighting in the mountains and forests, but nothing that can stop their main army. General Kang looked at the holographic display showing the massive alien flagship hanging in space directly above Geneva. Intelligence. Reports suggested it contained the entire enemy command structure, including their supreme commander. The ship was 5 kilometers long and protected by energy shields that could stop nuclear weapons. There is one option left, he said, checking the ammunition in his sidearm. A direct attack on their command ship. The room became very quiet. Everyone stopped working and stared at him. Sir, that would be suicide, whispered communications specialist Oh Dayun. She was barely 20 years old and had joined the military only 6 months ago. Even if someone could get aboard that ship, it has 10,000 crew members. Not someone, General Kang said, sealing his combat armor. Me. He turned to face his staff. These young officers had followed him through 3 days of hell, watching their world burn around them. Now, he was about to abandon them, but sometimes a commander's final duty was to die alone so others might have a chance to live. Colonel Bay, you are now in command. Coordinate with the resistance cells. Make every bullet count. He activated the stealth device they had salvaged from a crashed alien scout ship, and broadcast everything. Let every human know that someone is still fighting. The small transport ship Hope's End had been a civilian pleasure craft before the war. Now it carried weapons, armor plating, and a cargo hold full of explosives. General Kang piloted it himself, using every trick he had learned in 40 years of military service. The alien flagship was surrounded by a cloud of debris from destroyed human ships and space stations. General Kang flew his small craft through the wreckage, using the metal chunks to hide his approach. The enemy's sensors were designed to detect large ships, not a single small vessel moving slowly through the debris field. The crash landing in the alien hangar bay was controlled chaos. General Kang deliberately rammed his ship into a fuel storage area, causing explosions that sealed the emergency blast doors. He found himself trapped in a section of the ship with approximately 50 alien crew members, but they were trapped with him too. The Vorthans were not expecting a ground battle inside their own ship. Their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not close quarters fighting in narrow corridors. General Kang had trained for exactly this kind of urban warfare. He moved through the alien ship like a ghost, striking quickly and disappearing before the enemy could respond. His explosives destroyed weapon storage rooms. His captured alien rifle took out communication centers. His knowledge of ship design, gained from studying the wreckage of earlier battles, let him target the most important systems across Earth. Human resistance fighters gathered around damaged radios and computer screens, watching grainy video feeds from cameras built into General Kang's armor. The images showed a single figure moving through alien corridors, fighting impossible odds. "That is impossible," breathed resistance leader Song Vaejin from her hidden base in the Korean mountains. One person cannot fight an entire ship. But the impossible was happening. Hour after hour, the lone human continued his mission. He moved through ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and cargo holds. He used the ship's own systems against its crew, turning their automated defenses into weapons. The psychological effect on the alien crew was devastating. They had conquered 17 worlds, but they had never faced an enemy who could strike anywhere, at any time. Security teams rushed to areas where he had been spotted, only to find empty corridors and sabotaged equipment. Commander Vexful paced the bridge, listening to increasingly frantic reports from his security teams. "Sector 7 has lost power," reported his aide. The human destroyed their main power coupling and disappeared into the maintenance shafts again. "How many casualties?" 53 dead, sir. But there is something else. Something strange." Vexful turned, his forearms flexing with anger. "Report. The wounded in Sector 7 were found with medical bandages applied to their injuries. Professional treatment. The human ... helped them before moving on." The bridge fell completely silent. In 1,000 conquests across 17 worlds, no Vorthon had ever heard of such a thing, an enemy treating the wounds of soldiers who had been trying to kill him moments before. Deep in the ship, General Kang continued his mission, but each wounded alien he encountered forced him to make the same choice. He could kill them easily, or he could show them something their species had never experienced. He chose mercy, and that choice would change everything. The hunt for the lone human had turned Commander Vexfel's flagship into a maze of fear and confusion. For 20 hours, his security teams had chased shadows through corridors, while their enemy struck and vanished like smoke. The bridge crew worked in tense silence as reports flooded in from across the massive ship. "Weapon storage bay destroyed," reported Security Chief Vexton, his voice tight with frustration. Navigation center offline. Main communications array damaged beyond repair. Commander Thexvel slammed one of his 4 fists against his command chair. How can one primitive human cause so much damage? We have 10,000 crew members. Sir, there is something else, his aide said hesitantly. The medical teams are reporting something unusual about the wounded. What now? Every injured crew member found in the human's path has received medical treatment. Professional bandaging, pain medication, even emergency surgery in some cases. The human is ... healing our wounded. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of damaged systems. In their 1,000-year history of conquest, the Vorthans had never encountered anything like this. Enemies were supposed to kill or be killed. They were not supposed to provide medical care to their attackers. Deep in the ship's maintenance tunnels, General Kang Minho moved carefully through the narrow spaces. His combat suit was damaged in several places, and blood seeped from wounds on his left arm and shoulder. He had been fighting for almost a full day, but his mission was far from complete. He dropped down into Corridor 12 through an air vent, and immediately saw the problem. 3 Vorthan soldiers lay on the floor, injured by the explosion he had set off in the weapons bay above them. One was unconscious, bleeding from a head wound. The other 2 were awake but trapped under fallen debris. General Kang could hear more enemy soldiers approaching from both directions. He had perhaps 2 minutes before they arrived. The smart tactical choice was to keep moving and let the aliens deal with their own wounded. But as he looked at the injured creatures, he remembered the words of his old training instructor: a soldier's duty is to protect life, not just take it. He knelt beside the unconscious Vorthan and began applying pressure bandages to stop the bleeding. The alien's breathing was shallow, but steady. General Kong injected a dose of universal pain medication from his medical kit, then moved to help free the others from the debris. "Why?" asked one of the trapped soldiers in broken human language. Its yellow eyes stared at him with confusion and something that might have been fear. "Because it is right," General Kong replied simply, lifting a heavy metal beam off the alien's legs. He finished treating their wounds, just as enemy reinforcements arrived at both ends of the corridor. General Kang threw a smoke grenade and disappeared back into the ventilation system, leaving behind 3 living enemies who would never forget what they had experienced. Lieutenant Vexmar had been part of the security team hunting the human for 12 hours. When the explosion in the power junction threw him against the wall and broke 2 of his ribs, he expected to die forgotten in the dark corridors. Instead, he woke up with professional medical bandages wrapped around his chest and a dose of pain medication in his system. He activated his communicator with shaking claws. "Command ... the human. It found me wounded, and it helped me. It showed mercy." The word spread through the ship like wildfire. Crew members gathered in small groups, whispering about the impossible enemy who healed instead of killed. Engineers and maintenance workers began asking questions that had never occurred to them before. Why would a defeated enemy help its captors? Wondered Medical Officer Kenthara as she examined the professional quality of the human's field surgery on wounded soldiers. "Maybe they are not defeated," suggested communications specialist Dorthel. "Maybe this mercy makes them stronger, not weaker." In the crew quarters, young Vorthan soldiers, who had grown up believing that might makes right, found themselves discussing concepts they had no words for. If mercy was weakness, why did it feel so powerful when they experienced it? If compassion was a defect, why did it make the humans seem more dangerous, not less? Commander Thexvel received these reports with growing unease. His crew was becoming infected with dangerous ideas. The humans' actions were undermining everything the Vorthan Empire stood for. "Sir, we have cornered the human in Section 15, reported his security chief. But the crew members in that area are ... hesitating. They want to understand why. It spared our wounded instead of finishing them off. Understanding is weakness. Vexful roared. Send all remaining security forces. End this now. But it was too late. The seed of doubt had been planted in the minds of his crew. As they prepared for the final assault, many of them wondered if their empire had been wrong about everything. Maybe the humans were not defective. Maybe mercy was not weakness. Maybe they were the ones who had something to learn. General Kong. Minho checked his remaining ammunition and prepared for his final battle. He had accomplished his mission of crippling the enemy ship, but more importantly, he had given them something that would outlast any military victory. He had shown them mercy, and that gift would change their civilization forever. The command deck of the Vorthen flagship had been sealed for 4 hours, but General Kong Minho had finally broken through the reinforced doors. His explosives had torn a hole in the thick metal, and emergency lighting cast strange shadows across the vast chamber where Commander Vexvel waited alone. The alien commander stood in the center of the room, his ceremonial sword drawn. His forearms moved in practiced combat positions as he watched the humans stumble through the smoking doorway. General Kong's armor was cracked and bloodied, and he moved like a man who had used up all his strength. So you are the one who has brought chaos to my ship, Commander Vexvel, said his translated voice echoing in the empty space. General Kang straightened as much as he could and raised his weapon. I came to stop you from destroying my people, and you have failed. My fleet will complete the conquest with or without this vessel. Your world will still fall, will it? General Kang gestured weakly at the darkened control stations around them. Your navigation is destroyed. Your communications are gone. Half your crew is asking questions they never asked before. Tell me, Commander, what happens to an empire when its soldiers learn about mercy? Commander Vexvel's yellow eyes blazed with anger. Mercy is weakness. Evolution threw it away for good reason. The strong survive by taking what they need from the weak. No, General Kang said, sinking to one knee as his strength finally gave out. Mercy is the strength to choose something different when you have all the power. It is what makes us more than just animals fighting over food. You speak nonsense, dying human. General Kang smiled, even though each breath was painful. Ask your wounded soldiers. They will explain it to you better than I can. The general's body fell to the deck as explosions began rocking the massive ship. His final act had been to overload the main reactor core, crippling the flagship and forcing the entire Vorthen fleet to retreat back to their own space. But the real damage had already been done, and it had nothing to do with machines or weapons. Lieutenant Vexmar stood in the medical bay, watching Vorthen doctors treat both their own wounded crew and captured human prisoners with equal care. The humans' example had spread through the ship like a virus, but one that made them question everything they had believed about strength and weakness. Why do we fight? Asked Medical Officer Kanthara, her claws gentle as she bandaged a young human pilot who had been shot down over Seoul. Because we are strong, and they are weak, Vexmar replied automatically, but the words felt empty in his mouth. Are they weak? She asked, looking at the human prisoner, who smiled and thanked her in broken Vorthen, despite being her enemy. This one could have let me die when the power core exploded. Instead, she pulled me to safety and treated my burns. It was a question that echoed through every deck of the damaged flagship as it limped back toward Vorthen space. The surviving crew members carried with them more than just reports of military defeat. They carried a single word that would reshape everything they thought they knew about civilization, mercy. On Earth. The scattered human resistance fighters emerged from their hiding places to find the alien fleet departing. The night sky, which had been filled with enemy ships for days, was slowly returning to normal. Cities lay in ruins, and billions had died, but humanity had survived. More importantly, they had taught their enemies something that would outlive any military victory. Colonel Bei Sunmi stood in the ruins of Geneva, reading the final transmission from General Kong's armor before it had been destroyed. His last words had been simple. Tell them we chose mercy because it was right, not because it was easy. Across the galaxy, the news of the defeat at Earth spread through the Vorthan Empire, like ripples in a pond. But along with the military reports came something else. Stories of wounded Vorthan soldiers who had been healed by their human enemy. Accounts of a warrior who could have killed but chose to save lives instead. Young Vorthans who had never questioned their empire's way of life began asking dangerous questions. Why had their ancestors thrown away mercy if it could make someone so strong? What other concepts might they have abandoned that could make them better? In the imperial palace on the Vorthan homeworld, Emperor Thexmore received his son's report with growing unease. The defeat at Earth was troubling, but the ideas his son's crew had brought back were far more dangerous to the Empire's stability. "Father, what if we have been wrong?" Commander Thexfell asked, his 4 arms trembling as he spoke. "What if mercy is not weakness, but a different kind of strength?" Years later, historians would mark the Battle of Earth as the turning point that changed to civilizations. The Vorthan Empire slowly transformed from a conquering force into something resembling a federation of worlds. They learned to negotiate instead of simply taking. They discovered that showing mercy to defeated enemies could turn them into allies. The word that had meant nothing to them had become the foundation of a new way of thinking, all because one human had faced their army alone and chosen compassion over cruelty, even at the cost of his own life. Mercy had revealed its true meaning through the actions of a single soldier who understood that real strength comes from choosing to be better than your worst instincts.